Hey everyone, Adam here. So as our podcast, I'm sitting down with Shawn Kittelsen to talk about his latest comic, Heart Attack. Shawn, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk about Heart Attack today.
Yeah, thank you for making the time to come on. I think we have a bit of a time difference, but that's cool. It's working out.
Yeah, no, it all works out. It all works out. It's bright and early here in LA.
Yeah. We were kind of talking a little bit before we hit record, and you mentioned that Heart Attack has been like about a decade in the making. Do you want to talk about
Yeah,
like the early days?
yeah. So this book, I've been working in video games for most of my career, and I had started working in video games at DC Comics, and I got the job at DC Comics and pursued that job because I wanted to get into comic books. So I tried to get into comic books and ended up getting into video games accidentally. And that and video games kind of took over and became my full-time thing. But I always wanted to work in more comics, and so I started doing the Mortal Kombat comics back in 2013. No, 2014 I got that gig. But prior to that, I'd been pitching stuff like all over the place because I knew I wanted to keep like one foot in comics while the rest of my work was in games. And Heart Attack was like the the book that I wanted to do that would be something completely different from everything else that I was doing, because all the other things that I worked on were superhero related. I ended up on the MK stuff that was, super ultra violent, martial arts, action combat. And I wanted to do something that was just a completely different story. Like, I wanted to do a love story. I really wanted to do my YA story. I've always loved a good high school movie or a high school like romance movie. And a Heart Attack was that. Like I was watching Romeo and Juliet on someone else's screen on a plane ride as the creepy guy. I was like sitting there, like leaning over, can't hear anything, but just like watching Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. Like, oh, I love this movie. Oh, Claire Danes was so good at this. Oh, Leo, this you were so young.
That's
And
a
I got
wild
off that
version.
plane. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's so wild. But I got off that plane like, I want to write a romance. Like, I'm really feeling it now. And so I came up with this initial idea of, what if you had Romeo and Juliet, but it was like a superhero and a supervillain? And then that evolved into the story of, well, what if instead of like superhero, it's supervillain? It was a much more grounded take on a world with superpowers. And what would two people on opposite sides of a sort of a class war going on between superpowered people and non-superpowered people look like? And that became Heart Attack. And that was back in 2013 that I first like got together with Sean Makowitz at Skybound and pitched him the book, and he was like, "Yeah, let's go. Let's write a first issue. Okay, let's go. Let's write an arc." But a lot of things got in the way. At the same time that I was working on Heart Attack, I also left the full-time job that I had to go freelance writing, and comics were not paying my mortgage. Let's
Yeah.
say comics is tough. It's a grind. You really gotta, like, I have so much respect for the people that can pull it together and like grind out those early years, building up your body of work and building up your monthly books to have a sustainable living. But I had video games as this much more profitable career at the time. So I would start working on Heart Attack, and then I would get a gig, and I would say, okay, I have to work like 12 hours a day writing this game for the next 6 months or the next 2 years. And one thing after another happened. And before I knew it, like, wow, years had passed. And I finally finished writing the first arc of Heart Attack. Wrote it twice because the first one was still a little bit too like big two superhero esque.
Mhm.
And Skybound came back with the challenge of, hey, your first couple of issues are really heartfelt and personal, and then after that, it seems to go really big and bombastic. What if you went back and tried to make the entire arc more of that heartfelt, personal story? And so I took that challenge and rebroke it. So that took more time, and then it took us a couple of years to find Eric Zavadsky, our artist. Once we had that, like it took us, I want to say it took us almost 2 years to like lock in, get him on the schedule, be ready. Eric drew the book super fast, and we started publishing at the end of 2019. And then the pandemic hit in
Right, of course,
2020.
right? As soon as your book's out there.
As soon as my book's out there, stopped shipping in the middle of the arc. And there's this big gap. And then when stores start reopening and books start shipping again, sales just completely fell off. And at that point, it was this question of, okay, what happens now? Because I had written the second arc, and Eric had drawn 5 of the 6 chapters for the second arc. So all of the content of the big 300-page book that we're putting out now, like we already had most of that in the can in 2020. But because of shipping schedules, because of the delays and everything, it just took this long to get the book finished, get the book out there. Eric went off and did some amazing work with DC on the House of L trilogy with Claudia Gray. So we had to wait to be able to get him back to finish the final chapter. But it was all worth it, because now we've got the book that we have, and I feel like it's more relevant than ever, because it deals with a post-pandemic world where gene therapy has radically changed healthcare. And as a result, there's a generation that's sort of like, I would say that we call them variants. They're not quite mutants on an X-Men level, right? They don't look different. They don't have superpowers, or we call them in Heart Attack powers of mass destruction, which is the spin that news pundits put on superpowers, because it plays to the fear, right? It's not about, oh, if people with powers, bet they'll save us. It's more like, oh, if people have powers, I bet they'll become terrorists and like burn our society to the ground. And in this world where now there's this dynamic of people who fear variants because they're afraid that powers of mass destruction are real, our 2 leads, Jill and Charlie, find that whatever they touch, they have powers of mass destruction. And the book is about, one, the fact that they come from 2 very different angles. Jill is someone who is an influencer and an activist, and she's very much in the spotlight of the movement for variants to have equal rights. And Charlie is someone who just wants to be left alone. He's just trying to get out of a bad situation that he's found himself in, where he's been in foster care and in juvenile detention, and is just trying to get out of the system and be on his own, and doesn't want to be in the spotlight, doesn't want to be on anybody's radar. And so if the 2 of them have these powers only when they're together, but they're both moving in opposite directions, or want to move in opposite directions, how do they come together? How do they use their powers? How do they find common ground with each other? And then what are the consequences of the choices that they make? And that's what the book's about.
Very cool. There's a lot. I'm going to try to go in some kind of order.
No, I threw a lot at you. There's a lot.
That's all right. That was awesome. For your video game experience, I'm guessing you were breaking story and writing the story arcs for whatever game you were assigned to.
Yeah. So I started, I mean, I had a very charmed career. Like when I started at DC, I was an assistant editor, which is not an actual title in anything video games related. But at DC, they treated the role of assistant much like you would treat an editorial role on a comic book. So I was there to maintain sort of the creative integrity of the characters and the stories. And the first projects that I got to work on, was like Arkham Asylum, and DC Universe Online. And then that led to Arkham City and Arkham Knight, Arkham Origins, did Injustice Gods Among Us with NetherRealm Studios, which led to a long relationship with them. And really like that time at DC, those years at DC, built this broad base for my career, because I worked with so many amazing developers and so many games, that after I left DC and after I decided to go freelance, the rest of my career just kind of was a series of dominoes tipping from people who remembered working with me, didn't hate working with me, thought I had a good sense of taste. I had done some ghostwriting on a lot of the games. I had worked with the writing teams and the game directors and designers to break the stories down, to break the games down from the pitch. And so that then led to getting to be the narrative lead on Mortal Kombat 11 and Injustice 2, and writing a bunch of mobile games and hunting games and all other kinds of stuff in between. And then for the last 4 years, since 2019, I was at Skybound Games, where I oversaw, not like, I didn't get Heart Attack because I worked at Skybound. Heart Attack I did sell to Skybound like 10 years ago. So it's not a Nepo project. If anything, my job that I got was a Nepo job, because they were like, "Hey, we like your book, and we like your work in games. What if you come over and work on games for us?" So I oversaw the Walking Dead and Invincible franchises for Robert Kirkman and Skybound for 4 years, and now I'm at Skydance Interactive, where I'm the VP of Creative, running 2 studio teams that are working on VR games, and a publishing slate. That's looking towards like the future of VR and PC console games and all that fun stuff.
Wow, that is awesome. I mean, to start with like the Batman Arkham games and the like DC universe, like you could not get like a higher name
Yeah.
recognition than those. That's insane. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. I will say, like, I went into that job as a, finally, I'll get my foot in the door at DC, and I'll work a couple of years on video games, and then I'll go hit the big time and work on the comics. And there was a point where I had that opportunity. Like, the company split between New York and LA, in 2010. And I had an offer to go work in the editorial team and work on comic books. But at that point, I'd really fallen in love with the work in games. So I took the job, moved out here to LA, as part of the new DC office West Coast division. Yeah, what a charmed and lucky, like, I always say when people are like, "How do you break in? How do you do this?" Like, luck is such a big factor in it. Like, being able to network your way into the right circles to where you can find that lucky moment is like part one. Having the skill to do good work and make yourself known in a way that's positive to people and not have a terrible reputation is like, never work with that guy, he's the worst. That's the other part, but a lot of it's luck. How many people had that job before me at DC that worked on games like Batman Rise of Sin Tzu or Superman 64? And then I came in and they're like, "Here's Arkham Asylum. Like, what do you think of it?" And I'm like, "I think it's a classic. This is a 90+ game. This is going to be great." They're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. We don't make good games. We make licensed games. So we'll be lucky if we get a 75 or an 80." And I'm like, "Well, I actually think it's really good." And there were a couple of other folks there who were like, "We think it's good too, but nobody believes us." And then when it came out and it was that good, it was a game changer for how we could treat licensed games. And I look at things like, I'm playing Spider-Man 2 right now with my son. He draws all the Spider-Man over my shoulder there. He's my resident Marvel zombie. But like, I look at what a change that is for people to get excited about superhero games now versus dreading them. People are excited for the Wolverine game from Insomniac. People are excited for more DC games to come out. So I was just lucky to be there at the turn of the tide.
Those Arkham games created like the template, or I don't know if it would be the engine. I don't know if it's that deep. I don't know the technical terms, but that style of superhero game became the standard. So that's really cool that you were right there on the ground level.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. And it definitely, like I said, it was a career defining like era in my life where I was in that spot and I got to work with all those folks, and especially like, because I was there at the end of Arkham Asylum, and then I was there for all of Arkham City, and the beginning of Arkham Knight, and all of Arkham Origins as well. Arkham Origins is underrated.
I agree.
But like the experience that I had there, working with Rocksteady at really what I feel like was the peak for that studio of like all of their talent and all of their skill being applied to these amazing, like you said, like genre defining games. I learned so much that like I still apply today. Like there are lessons that I took. I often think of that time as both the time when I was building my early career, my reputation in the games industry, and also it was like my master's program in games, and helped inform how I think of the other work I do in other media. Like I don't think I would have had the confidence to write the things I've written, and even things. I mean, I've worked in like children's animation, writing Polly Pocket and Enchantimals for Mattel. And that's a completely different mode, but I also learned so much about just characters and, finding the authentic spirit of those characters and using that to the advantage of the story and using that to the advantage of the medium. And all of those were things that I tools and practices that I picked up working on Arkham, working on DC Universe Online, working with NetherRealm on Injustice.
Writing for a video game, and especially writing like Mortal Kombat, like you said, is like ultra violence. Then you have Batman, which is a long established character. Then your work at Mattel with very kid centric stuff. I'm sure you took bits of all of it, like you were just saying, how to find the heart of a character and all that to bring into Heart Attack.
Yeah.
What's really different, like positive, like writing a video game compared to writing a comic, or writing like the kid characters to writing a comic? If that question makes sense. I don't know if I'm phrasing it properly.
No, it does make sense. I mean, the biggest difference between like writing a game and writing anything linear, like is in when you're writing a game, you're not writing for an audience, you're writing for a player. An audience is there to receive a story that you tell. A player is there to participate in a story that they're a part of. So when you're writing a linear story, you're writing a comic or a cartoon or a screenplay, you're trying to motivate the characters. You're trying to give them goals, give them high stakes for those goals and create urgency for them to pursue those goals. You have to put the player in the place of that character, which fundamentally changes your relationship to things. So, for the fighting games, for example, they look like movies in a lot of ways, because you can watch a supercut on YouTube, and if you want, you can watch a 3-hour version of Mortal Kombat or Injustice. But you don't write those the way you would write a movie, because if you wrote a movie, you wouldn't write a 3-hour movie with 52 fights in it. Like that would
right.
that would be bonkers. But when you're writing a game, you're not thinking of it as a 3-hour movie with 52 fights. You're thinking of it as a series of scenes and scenarios that are building up the players' goals and motivation and urgency to fight. you're getting them angry. Like there's always the sort of like, how are we getting the player to a place where they're like, I really want to punch Brainiac. Like I really, really want to punch Shao Kahn. That kind of writing is very different versus when I go do something like Heart Attack. I think the biggest difference from a Heart Attack to all of the other stuff that I've worked on is I've worked on all these big franchise things, which get more attention and will definitely sell more than Heart Attack, at least until like the Heart Attack TV series comes out and changes everything.
Yeah.
But like writing characters that don't have an established history and writing characters that are really just like, okay, I'm generating these from like a part of my heart deep in there somewhere. Like there are facets of my personality that go into those characters. And then in a comic, you're working with an artist. So much like in film, you're writing a line and then you're trusting an actor will perform it and deliver it with their own conviction and their own personality on it. When you give an artist your script, it's a trust fall. You're handing that person the script saying, okay, like I trust you to find the performance in this. And Eric Savatsky was this amazing partner to have on Heart Attack, and like truly a co-creator, because it wasn't just that I handed him the scripts and he drew what I told him to draw. I handed him scripts, and he adapted those scripts into the best visuals and character performances that he could summon. And then I would go back and adjust my lettering around that, and all of the back matter material that I would write came after the fact, because I would be reacting to how the book had actually felt when it was drawn and realized by Eric.
That's always cool to hear about the collaboration between the writer and the artist, because you're writing it so personally to you, and then like you said, you have to trust somebody else to realize your vision, but also understand there's going to be some of them into it too. So you kind of have to like let your kid go off into the world.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's such an important thing for anybody who's interested in like working, as a creator or in a creative medium. Like, you, unless you're going to be a novelist and you're just going to write for you, uh, you have to share.
Mhm.
You have to share your vision, and you have to share your trust, and you have to share your love with other people. I mean, working on games is a huge task. It's there's dozens or hundreds of people working on a game, so you're all sharing a vision. And a comic is, I think, a more intimate medium because it's a smaller group. It's you, it's an artist, a letterer. Uh, we had amazing letters by Patrick Brousseau on Heart Attack. You've got your editors who come in and help shape it and form it. But a lot of it is the voice of you and the artist, like finding a way to sing in harmony and riff on each other.
For sure, yeah. You were talking about going from writing well established, very familiar name characters to writing something totally original, brand new characters. Which parts of each did you find to be freeing or restraining?
Oh, writing established characters is way easier, I think, and I think it's like, and I don't say that flippantly. It's just that it's you're not starting from a blank page, and in a lot of ways, and I've been really lucky. I've gotten to work on things that I love, right?
Mm.
Like when working on Injustice was this dream come true, because I loved Mortal Kombat games growing up, and I loved Superman. And so I could channel that love into what I was doing, and I had so much inspiration to draw from. I could cite so many things, and I could put my own spin on things. Um, even working, with Robert Kirkman and Skybound on Walking Dead and Invincible stuff was like an act of, in some ways it's fan service, but in other ways it's just like recognizing why I love these things. Why did I love The Walking Dead? Why did I love Invincible? And then finding ways to channel that into the work. Um, when you're starting from the blank page, it is a lot harder, and it's easier to second guess yourself.
Okay.
Um, it's easier to get that imposter syndrome on. And I do think I had that, and I think that's something that Skybound recognized in the very first version of the first arc, where they said like, hey, you started out with something that was you, and something that felt authentic, and something that felt unique, and then you drifted into this kind of big two bombastic super action place. Like you made it, you had a book that felt like Heart Attack, and then you made a book that felt like another DC or Marvel book. And so I appreciated having someone who would call me out. Like, you got to have people who are really honest with you and brutal. But that was the kind of challenge that I needed to write a book that I think stands out from the kind of stuff that you get from most other books dealing with superpowers. It has a different texture, it has a different voice, and a different rhythm to it. And I'm really proud of that. Like, that's, in many ways, it's like you can be a lot more proud of the thing that is purely like original and something that you created. Even though, I would love for it to find the audience of millions that the games that I've worked on have found. But realistically, you know, the people who find and love Heart Attack, and the people who discover it and it resonates with them, there's kind of like a deeper connection there. than what I have. Like I love Mortal Kombat fans and DC fans and Walking Dead and Invincible fan, all that. But like there is a deeper connection when someone's like, that thing that you wrote that's original,
Yeah.
I really connected with. And you're like, oh man, thank you. That comes from a deeper place.
Yeah, because there can be a fan of DC, now they're a fan of you.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's
not
very
even that
cool.
they're a fan of me. That's the weird thing. I never feel like they're a fan of me because I'm always like, oh, you'd be so disappointed if you spent. I'm not as interesting as that book. That book has a lot of concentrated, the most interesting things that I can come up with. Concentrated. It's distilled and concentrated. Regular me is just regular. We're all just regular people.
Mm.
Definitely not that interesting.
I do see your point, though. That is, it's very cool that people are flocking to something that wholly came out of your head.
Yeah, it makes you, I mean, this is going to sound super cheesy, but it makes you feel a little less alone in the world. In the same way that, like, when you hear a song and it feels like it was written about you, or it's a song that you're like, oh, that's the same. My heart sings that song too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, there's something really special about knowing, like, okay, I took this chance. I was really vulnerable and I exposed a part of myself by putting this original thing out there and then kind of hoping, like, I hope it doesn't suck. I hope you like it. And then when someone's like, no, it's really good, I like it, that feeling of, it's not just validation, but it's a sense of resonance of like, okay, I'm not alone in thinking this way. I'm not the only person who feels this way or has a view of the world that is shaped like this story. There's something special there.
Yeah, you're tapping into it. That's very cool.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
also
for
like
sure.
that Skybound, your kind of partner company, allowed you, or not only allowed, but it insisted that you did the more intimate approach instead of being like, oh, but in, the latest Batman movie, he did this. So can you make it more like that? You're like, no, let's make it about the characters. I didn't get all the way through it, but I had read a good deal before we started. And it did strike me as that smaller story, and I don't mean that in a bad way, like intimate story world. And I also really liked how you handled the powers. It kind of reminded me of Looper with the psychic powers,
Mhm.
where it wasn't this grand thing where everyone's changing the world and there's no more problems except for one guy. Like I really loved that very realistic approach to it.
Yeah, that was all. I think it is something too that uh, Skybound has in their core DNA as a company that's co-founded by Robert Kirkman. If you look at his work, you see that a lot of his work is a reaction to the things that he loves, where he's not trying to emulate George Romero
Mm-hmm.
with The Walking Dead. He's not trying to just homage superhero books with Invincible, but he's saying, like, there's something about those things that doesn't feel true to me. What does the true version of that? What does a version of that that feels more authentic to me look like? And what's my take that's not going to um, succumb to the same tropes or the same, like, or the things that have become tropes. Like a lot of things, like Night of the Living Dead was super duper original
Mm-hmm.
when it came out, and now there's a million other zombie things. So how do you make zombies feel fresh again? And Heart Attack was like, well, and I've worked on so much DC stuff at this point. Um, and I'd definitely had that sense of, and I'd grown up loving so many of these superhero comics. I really wanted to make something that didn't feel like the things that I already had. And realistically, if you had superpowers, it would just go so wrong so fast. Like,
Yeah.
I really thought about that. I'm like, okay, would I really like be able to save the world or change everything? And it's like, no, like being able to punch something really hard, or like become the Human Torch, or like fling cars around with your mind, is like an awesome circus trick, but you try to practically apply it and it never works out. And I mean, I think about it a lot the way, I think I like, well, the book itself is fairly political, so I guess it's already kind of a third rail. But like, you look at American force used overseas all over the place, like, and sort of the legacy of post World War II America, and you've got ostensibly the most powerful nation maybe the most powerful like governing state in the history of humanity, right? Nuclear weapons and a massive military, this huge budget. Um, did America fix the world?
Mm,
No, just because you can
no.
blow everything up. You're like, I have the power to blow up everything. And it's like, okay, what did you do with that? It's like, I don't know. It's only good for blowing things up. Like it's
Yeah.
not good for fixing things. And so that's really the story. When I had that kind of that insight of like, they got this power, what do they do with it? I was like, well, they're not gonna, the world doesn't suddenly revolve around them. They don't become the center of everything. I didn't want to write a book about chosen ones that just like magically change everything and
Hmm.
it's all about them. I wanted to make a book that kind of acknowledges like no matter how special you are, what abilities you have, there's limitations, and you have to find a way to work with a community to make change happen. Change doesn't happen just because you can fling a car
Right.
across a football field.
That nuclear weapon analogy, I think, is the perfect one because there is also a very positive side to nuclear energy if you harness it properly, but when used wrong, that was
Yes,
really good.
absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely.
a few minutes ago, you said something that for people listening might think it was like maybe a throwaway line or like a joke or something, where you said, until Heart Attack as a TV show, but that is a reality, or it will be soon. Do you want to go
Yeah,
into that a
yeah.
little bit? I don't know how much you can say.
Oh, Skybound is developing a TV show with Fuji TV in Japan. So there's a live action Heart Attack TV series that's going to be shot in Japan. It's supposed to shoot early next year. Within just a few months, start shooting. And there are scripts, there are outlines. It's really trippy to see a book that in many ways is so much about, I mean, it's set in Austin, Texas, and it's got this very, I think, distinct, like to me, it was like, oh, this has a very American or Western cultural lens on it. To see the same story resonate with a Japanese audience and to see Japanese creators like putting their stamp on it and refracting it through their cultural lens is both an honor and one of the coolest things that's ever happened in my life. Because like I was saying before, that original thing, you're putting it out there and you just don't know, like, are people going to like this? I was glad that Skybound liked it. Like
Hmm.
that to me was enough. I was like, I'm glad my editors like it. I'm glad that Eric likes it enough to draw it. But to to literally have it cross a culture and go to Japan and have these really incredibly talented people at Fuji TV and these amazing like directors and writers and actors coming together. Um, that's awesome. Like that's like, wow, okay, there is something universal there. There is some truth. Like no matter how far you go, we're all human. We all feel the same feelings.
Yeah, I guess that speaks again to your theme of characters first and making it character centric, is that it becomes a more universal application.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's just something really everyone can relate to. And that's why I love having a romance, because everyone can relate to falling in love. Everyone can relate to having a crush or that first kiss, that first time you hold someone's hand. Um, and so for that to, manifest as a power for Jill and Charlie's characters, um, I think we really hit on something that people connect with, that they're like, oh, it would be pretty cool if I could grab my partner's hand and suddenly we had superpowers. That would be a pretty neat fantasy. And then to be able to tell a story about that and how that can challenge a relationship, and how a relationship can grow and mature with those circumstances. I think I tried to keep it relatable. I hope it's relatable. Apparently it is, at least for Fuji TV.
Yeah, I think you're doing it.
Yeah, but yeah, so hopefully that series gets filmed, and I think there's every intention for it to find distribution for it, like globally, so that American audiences will be able to enjoy it, either subtitled or dubbed, and then who knows, maybe we'll get an English language TV show at some point. Like I will hold out hope for the long game. Skybound's got a good record of adapting things, and I really trust the people there and what they're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Shawn, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. I don't want to keep you here all day because we could really go into the weeds with everything.
Yeah, man, we can start reminiscing about Clifton Park
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
growing
People
up.
miss that we weren't recording, but we actually knew each other from 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
It's very cool. It's really awesome what you're doing. And honestly, maybe this is just personal to me, but somebody that's like, oh, I know that guy. I've been to his house when he was in high school, and you're doing your thing. It's a huge inspiration for anyone who wants to do something creative when you're like one step away from a person who's making it happen. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks, man. And like, that's the I still feel like the kid in my room, like listening to Weezer records and reading comic books and stuff. Like there's a part of me that you some people I think lose touch with that, but I try to never lose touch with the roots there.
Yeah.
Because that's why we do it, right? Like I think at some point you get into to doing creative work and it becomes just another job, and it's
Mhm.
easy for that to happen. And I've had points in my career where I've felt that way, but I think I feel really lucky the last several years. It's just been kind of this bucket list that I keep checking off, and the little kid in me is like, this is freaking rad. Like this is really sweet. And hopefully, yeah, I hope everyone knows, like, you know, you don't have to start as an insider. Like if you could come from humble beginnings, and you can make a career out of this, but you do got to stick it out. It takes a lot of patience, and then being in the right place at the right time, and hopefully someone hands you Arkham Asylum and says, hey, you want to work on this.
Yeah, but in the age of the internet, like if someone wants to do their thing, do your thing, get it out there.
Yeah, man. Robert Kirkman started in Kentucky, like in working out of his house, lettering his own books. Like he hustled, and yeah, it can come from anywhere. But no matter what, you don't measure success in like having a like I don't measure my success as like, oh, Heart Attack's becoming a TV series. That's success. To me, it's like I finished Heart Attack. I did work that I'm proud of with people that I had fun working with. And the book is there and it's on my shelf and I can hold it and be proud of it. That to me that's the win.
Yeah, and going back to an earlier point, I think it's really cool that even though like life kept getting in the way and it took you a lot longer than you probably originally thought to write it, it never stopped. I think that's a really important
Yeah.
thing for people to keep a hang on to.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I've got projects that I've been working on since, before Heart Attack that I'll never let go of. And I think everybody who's creative, like you have those things that you might be working on them your whole life. They might never get made, but you got to keep working on it. You got to keep finishing things. Like never leave like a drawer of half finished scripts to just rot. Like finish them, take them
Yeah,
out.
for
Like
sure.
don't give up on the dream.
Very cool. Well, Shawn, before we sign off, do you want to tell everybody where they can find Heart Attack, where they can find more of your work? If you want
Yeah,
to promote
here.
your socials or anything?
So this is the book. That's what it looks like. So get Heart Attack. It's available wherever books are sold. It's digital. So if you want to get it online, you can do that. Go to bookshop.org, go to Amazon. And then if you want to check out more of my work, check out Mortal Kombat 11 and Justice 2, obviously. I co-wrote Omni-Man with Robert Kirkman for Mortal Kombat 1. So check out Omni-Man and Mortal Kombat 1 coming out. I think it's this week. And then look forward to some more of my work in Skydance Interactive's upcoming VR games, and definitely check out The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners if you have a Quest or PlayStation VR.
You wrote on that too?
No, I was on the Skybound side for that one, but now I've jumped over to the studio. So that's the team that I'm working with now. We have a game called Behemoth coming out in 2024 that I'm really, really excited about.
So cool. Well, Shawn, thanks again. You're doing amazing things. It's really awesome. Just for you to list it is so cool to hear. So congratulations and thanks again.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. Anytime.